As a person with complex PTSD, I know too well how terrible it can be for those who love us when our lashing out and emotional dysregulation are active. When you're the person who's dysregulated and who's acting out on abandonment wounds, it feels like the other person is the cause of the anger and the grief and the terror going through you. And if you were to therefore believe, if you don't yet have that wisdom built up from healing work, if you believe that they should be able to make the bad feelings go away in you, the worst thing that they can do is to try to take responsibility for that. My letter today is actually a comment I found on YouTube from a woman who calls herself Maria. And she writes, "Dear Anna, I'm trying to understand where my partner's anger comes from, how it works, and why our fights go badly every time. Usually they feel unheard or find that I'm being too stubborn, and it leads them to blow up and call me names and kick things, etc. Usually these situations are pretty low stakes, like a clogged toilet this morning, for example. We have one bathroom, and usually we need to go at the same time. I went first because I woke up earlier, and they needed to go immediately after me. Now, I've got the fairy pencil. I'm going to circle some stuff I want to come back to in this post that was on YouTube. But first, let's go through and see what Maria's comment is all about here, and then I'll come through a second time. So the partner was waiting to go to the bathroom and reminded me to flush the toilet once halfway through so that it doesn't clog, but I didn't, and of course it clogged. Thus ensued a whole outburst of anger from my partner, which included name-calling, insults, screaming, shouting, kicking things. To me, these situations are low stakes. Something that's definitely annoying but not life-ending, and what I would expect ideally from my partner is that these small hurdles are things we can deal with together without anger or frustration, because it is just what it is. I apologized for not listening and said that I should have done what they said, but I just didn't because I thought it would be fine, and it has nothing to do with whether I think I'm more right than my partner, which is what they seem to believe every time. Anyway, this doesn't seem to help, and for me, this outburst of anger is very triggering given my own issues, but I try to calm myself and remind myself that my partner isn't my family, etc. That etc. is always kind of covering up a lot of stuff, isn't it? Okay. Usually after these episodes, it ends with us spending time alone to wind down, but usually my partner doesn't seem to calm down even with lots of time. Even if I apologize and try my best to understand and listen to what happened, and I try to make sure I make changes going forward so it doesn't happen again. But I don't like how these small things turn into big outbursts, and I don't think they realize that the insults they say when they're angry do affect me. It doesn't feel like my partner cares about me or loves me in these moments. Only after I say this does my partner feel a bit worried, and then they begin to feel fully guilty and shameful about everything, and they decide it was all their fault. I don't need them to take the blame for everything. I just want to be able to have a conversation about it. I fully understand my part in it, and I have no problem being held accountable for it. I don't even mind if my partner gets mad at me or annoyed if I do things that make them mad. I completely understand that it's just part of a relationship. I just can't help but feel very hurt by the things they say while they're angry, and these outbursts just continue to happen despite any promises to change and do better. It makes it incredibly hard to deal with the situation at hand. I'm not sure where to go from here and how to make sure my partner understands that I'm there to help and support them when they're dealing with this thing together. Even if one of us makes a mistake or doesn't listen, that's what I want to do. I want us to be able to go about it calmly and then have a conversation about it later. All right, that's from Maria. Oh, okay. I think I can help, Maria. So what I hear you doing is rationalizing, reasoning, trying to reason with your partner, trying to reason with me. And what was so telling, though, like everything you're doing just sounds like a good, positive partner behavior. But where you're glitching is in believing that this should work, because you're not dealing with a healthy person. You're dealing with somebody who explodes at you every time they feel frustrated or upset about it, to the point that they yell, they're verbally abusive, they start kicking things around the house. And that is, that's like up the spectrum from verbally abusive to physically violent, maybe not hitting you, but kicking things. And in my book, that's not acceptable. Kicking things is going way too far. And this continuing pattern of yelling at you and screaming and shouting about you not flushing the toilet halfway through going to the bathroom, that is, it sounds like it could be complex PTSD. It's some kind of emotional dysregulation without having to read their minds or anything about why they are this way. Their behavior is unacceptable. And what you described here is that you apologized for not listening. So the problem isn't your apology. The problem is a neurological trigger, I would say, that's going off in your partner. Now, just because there might be a good explanation for why they behave that way still doesn't mean that it's acceptable and you should adapt yourself to it. I don't think somebody who can't control their rage is appropriate to be in a relationship with. You say partner, so it sounds like you live together, but it's not a marriage. Perhaps you don't have kids or a compelling reason to try to work it out, even though you've tried and tried. So they've made promises. It sounds like they only even try when you say that you don't feel like they care or love you, and only after you say that do they get worried. So anybody who is staying in the real world knows that kicking things and screaming at people is going to make them feel not loved and not cared for, because while they may emotionally love you, they're not able to do love the verb or care for you the verb, right? Where caring about your well-being and not asking you to live in an environment where you're getting screamed and physically threatened by things getting kicked. I grew up in a house like that. There was sometimes physical violence too, but I know how threatening and intense it can be when somebody's kicking furniture or walls or punching things. And it's not acceptable. I don't see any scenario where you could possibly be happy under these circumstances. And I would really hope that you don't raise children in such an environment, because that's a lot of why a lot of us are here with complex PTSD, is having grown up in environments that were threatening like that. So sometimes what people in your position do, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship in the past, is you go into denial and you try to become this like super good gal, who understands and can be so patient and walk through it. And after a while, it messes with your mind till you just keep thinking, I'm not doing a good enough job at appeasing them and making the circumstances such that they can get through this. And you keep thinking you're culpable. And I'm going to wager that what you're doing right now with people outside the relationship is hiding how bad it is. Maybe masking, putting on a facade about how great everything is, how great you are, how understanding you are. I'm guessing that because it's very rare that anybody can stay in that kind of a relationship without getting ostracized by everybody they know. And good friends will start to say, hey, I'm really concerned about you, Maria. That just sounds like it's a very damaging situation. Or maybe people have seen it before. Or maybe you avoid people because you're afraid your partner is going to go off in their presence. I'm just guessing, all right? I don't have a way to ask you here. But for the sake of everybody watching, that's a lot how we cope with somebody who's emotionally abusive and quasi-physically getting up the spectrum of violence. And so you say, I'm not sure where to go from here. And there's a couple places. I mean, this thing where I'm not sure where to go from here, I guess you're just referring on how to get him to be a good person, which is worth a try, but it's not working, is it? How to make sure he understands that I'm there to help and support him and deal with this thing. What you say right there, like, I'm just trying so hard. I want him to understand I'm there for him. And I want to ask you, Maria, why are you there for him? Why are you there for somebody who treats you like this? And why do you even want him to understand that? Do you really think that if you're nice enough and tolerant enough that he's going to come around and stop having this explosive temper? I don't think so. I don't think that you engaging in this game where you're responsible to create conditions that don't set him off is a good game or one that you can possibly win. You could separate. I would think that would be appropriate, is to separate, and perhaps your partner will get help and do something. But, people throw those words around like get help or you need therapy, and trying to insist that a partner go to therapy is a lot of times the the very thing that people who are doing this kind of like self-gaslighting about it, they're in a relationship that's intolerable, and they're like, if you would just get therapy. But that's a little bit magical thinking that that's at all how they're thinking of it. If they wanted therapy, if they wanted to get their act together, they would do that. They would do something about it. Like saying you're going to change it when you can't change it is just sort of clear evidence. Okay, you can't change it by yourself. You're going to need help. And even then, do we really know that this person can change? So I would not even think of spending more time in this relationship, but I would consider, perhaps if it's what you really want, if you really love this person, is to create a time period where you're not in their life and they are free to work on their behavior if they choose to. And then at some point you come back together and they can tell you what they've done and demonstrate to you what the difference is. And without moving in together, you start to spend a little time with them and see if it's something they can change. And so as someone who has had emotional dysregulation myself, I don't consider it acceptable to do to other people, even though at various times it leaks out and happens. But immediately I do know what to do. You know, I have done the work and I understand things well enough to recognize when it's happened, to immediately take 100% responsibility for it, and to use my tools to stop doing it, and to the point that I can be a viable partner for another person. And that's what I've been able to do. And even then, it takes somebody who loves you a lot to put up with that it would even ever happen at all, even a little bit. Because it's just not acceptable to emotionally abuse other people, to fly off the handle on them, to behave in a threatening manner like that. So that's my reality check for you, Maria. This sounds terrible, actually. And I just hear you trying to take all the responsibility yourself for making it better and trying to reason with them. And the thing about, I don't know if what he has is CPTSD. I wouldn't be surprised. He behaves like somebody who has very bad, untreated emotional dysregulation. And sometimes that's from CPTSD, or sometimes it's from a personality disorder or a mental health challenge of some kind that probably is also rooted in trauma as well. But that it's that type of thing. It's not an easy overnight fix. It's not an easy overnight fix. It takes absolute surrender for a person who falls into that kind of behavior. And I just think if you're the one pressuring for the change, it's very, very unlikely you're going to get that in any kind of a timeline that's meaningful to you. I would encourage you to really bring your focus right back into yourself and go, what's going on with me that I'm trying to rationalize and make work a relationship with a person who emotionally abuses me? Something's going on with you, Maria. And that's just kind of what we do. It's normal, but it's not a good thing when we end up just taking all our focus, putting it on somebody else and thinking if we could make them change, we would be okay. But that is like, yeah, if we could make Mars habitable, we could just go live there, but we can't. So, perhaps somebody will do that one day, but that's not what's going on right now. We have to make this habitable. So I would just really encourage you, get your focus back on yourself. One thing you can do when you're in doubt or you're not really sure, if you're confused about your relationship, is just hands off. Stop trying to make it go anywhere. Stop trying to influence the other person. Don't try to initiate anything. Just sit there and observe how you get treated and see what happens. Just see what happens and allow yourself to be honest. The second thing, Maria, is because I suspect you're living in secrecy, you're not talking to people about what's going on, is get together with other people, specifically other women who are healing themselves from this kind of thing. And you could find that in a 12-step group or in a therapy group or in my membership program. You could come on in and start being open with some other people about what's going on. It's a very brave step to take. And the reason we're scared to do it when we're in that kind of relationship is because we know we're going to get disapproval. And that fear of having to leave the relationship is very strong. But even if people disapprove of you, you don't have to leave. I would just encourage you to do whatever you have to do to be in reality, to face the truth of your own life, of the difference between what you want in your life and what you have, and start thinking about how would you get from one to the other. How would you get there? So of course our instincts is like, I'll just change the person I'm with and then we'll be in this place I want to be, this kind of relationship I want. And, you've had a certain number of months or years getting that experience, consider it can't be done here. So many of us you said you had issues. I don't know what they are, but I can imagine you learned to tolerate bad behavior in others and to try to be resilient and helpful. And, maybe you're the oldest daughter in a family that's dysfunctional. Things like that are often the precursor. A parent who's an alcoholic, people who aren't there for you. Tolerating anger, learning to dissociate and shut down when people are freaking out like that, because otherwise it would be so upsetting you couldn't really go on with your day. So that's my suggestion to you, Maria. And I hope that helps. And for everyone listening, I've got a little resource that can help you understand CPTSD in yourself and other people. And you can click and learn more about it right here. And I will see you very soon.